Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm your arts reporter, Bobby Pominville. I'm very pleased today to welcome one of my former students, Phil Cadidlo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And I call him a musician, a composer, and a vocalist. So I have to say, he came out of my music classes with a lot of expertise, and he actually excelled even in first grade. I might have to tell that story.
You go right ahead. I'd like to hear how it comes out.
Anyway, I'll tell you how he astounded me one day. He came up to me and he said, "I can play America just like you play it." And I said, "Okay, really?" And the other teacher and myself were like, "Well, I don't know, maybe he can." And so then we decided, okay, we're going to let him try. So he got up to the piano, and yes, he played every note perfectly, the same way I played America on the piano. And I was totally blown away by that. I have never had a first grader like that, ever, and since. And it was just so wonderful to see that talent, because you started out with so much ability.
Well, I get it naturally from my parents, especially my mom.
That's true.
She was the organist at our church, and
Yes.
probably my first musical influence. So,
Yes.
along with God, who I give most of the credit to for planting the gift in me, I also credit my mom with and Dad for getting me started with piano lessons at age 5. I took from Myrtle Fegley.
Did you?
I don't know.
Yes,
if you
I
remember
do,
her,
certainly.
Yeah, she was my
Certainly.
piano teacher all the way up through junior high, and she made me learn to read music even though I could play by ear.
Yes.
And she said, "That's great," and she affirmed that, but she also said, "I want you to learn to read the notes too."
That is
So,
the most
yeah.
wonderful story, because so often it happens that people come back to me and they say, I never learned to read the notes. And it really kind of hampers me. But I can listen to anything and I can play it. Well, that's an ability I don't have, because I'm note taught. And my whole life I had to study the notes and learn to read them.
Yeah.
So I wished for the opposite. I wanted to be able to improvise and do that kind of thing. So I actually took a class one time, and I learned a little.
That's good.
But
Yeah.
I never got to the ability of where you are. So now you have a show coming up at the Phipps.
Yes.
But before we go there, I want you to tell us about your experiences that contributed to your love of music and your growth as a musician.
Well, again, back to my mom, I remember one of my earliest memories of thinking that I could somehow play music was that we would come home from church, and I would have heard her playing a certain, piece at church, and I would sit down at our piano, and again, by ear, just start picking out that piece. So, I mean, it was being in church, hearing music, and then eventually the music that I heard, in school, the music that I heard on the radio, those all contributed to a love of music. I remember when I was, I think, about 4th grade, I got my first transistor radio.
Oh.
And with the earphone, and I remember it was on my birthday, and that night I slept out on the couch and fell asleep with the earbud in my ear, and it was such a new thing, because I shared a bedroom with my brother, and he had a radio, but it was always the ball game or the hockey game or whatever.
Oh, right.
Rarely music, and so now I had my own tap into pop music, and I really kind of became a student of popular music at that point too. And so that just, that along with studying piano, and then eventually I played percussion in the high school band and so forth,
okay.
and continued playing both piano and percussion.
Right.
And along the way discovering that I could actually sing. I started doing that around college or senior year of high school. My choir director had said, Phil, I know you like to play the piano, but I really think you should sing in the choir at least one year, and that led to me meeting my wife Robin in a vocal jazz group down at
really?
UW River Falls. Yeah, the spring of my
That's
senior year of high school. My choir
Oh,
teacher said,
my.
you should go try out for this group. So I mean, all these doors that have opened along the way and people's encouragement
goodness.
to try new things has just enriched what I do musically. So
Well, and at such a young age, you were aware of all that, and you actually pursued it, and it's so neat to hear that you really went into all those different genres. And so, see, you were building your repertoire right there.
yeah, exactly.
And now today, I can't imagine. I suppose if I said a name, you could just go to the piano and play it.
Well, probably, I don't know, 50% of what there's music, that's popular now that I would have no idea.
Oh yeah, nowadays
but,
it's gone a little off course
yeah,
with
yeah.
certain things, but there's still some ballads out there. It's some nice
yeah,
things.
there is.
And vocal jazz has always been kind of fun for me to listen to.
Yeah, that's had a kind of a resurgence of popularity
Oh,
too.
I agree. Now, I was going to go back and talk about Trinity Lutheran before we get to your group, and that is you have been responsible for planning the music at Trinity Lutheran in Stillwater. What exactly does that mean? What do you have to do for that?
Well, that's been 26 years of my life, and again, that was something that my wife Robin and I did in tandem. We both were pretty fresh out of college, and Trinity was just beginning a contemporary worship service back in 1987.
Oh, yes.
And so they called Robin and said, would you like to come and sing? And she said, yeah, can I bring my fiance along? And he plays piano. So I mean, it was just sort of a surreptitious beginning to something. But having grown up in church, both of us, we at least knew what it was like to be in church and what worship music was, because we were coming out of both the college music environment, which was very secular, and then from popular and jazz environments as well. So to jump in to do church music, it's kind of like, okay, we'll try. But it grew into something much bigger and deeper for both of us. We had a four-piece group that started there, and that group was together for probably 15 or more years.
Oh, wow.
And we added more people as we went, and the service grew, and it became a place that celebrated two traditions of music: the very traditional, which we still have,
right,
and contemporary, and so it's now grown into a full-time position for me there.
Right. Now, that's really something in itself.
Yeah, so
when you think of how church music has changed.
It's changed a lot, even, I mean, in those 26 years that we've been there.
Right.
Our styles and repertoire continues to turn over, which is kind of interesting, compared to a lot of the traditional worship music. I mean, we still use hymns at both services, actually. We might lead them a little differently, but I mean, we continue to honor the tradition of Lutheran hymnody and so forth. But we have a pretty broad spectrum of music that we'll use at our contemporary service as well. We'll even sometimes pull from, popular music that's not specifically sacred music, but if it fits a theme or a message, it might have an appropriate use. So, yeah.
And then, when did you start composing?
I would say I got serious about it during my time at Trinity. Part of it was, I grew up in a small church here in Hudson that didn't have a choir. And so I never really heard a lot of choral music growing up other than, the high school choir. But when I got to Trinity, they had not one but two really excellent adult choirs. And one of my jobs in the early days was being back in the sound booth, operating the microphones and so forth.
Sure.
So I was hearing these choirs week after week, and I just started to fall in love, kind of later in a person's life than might be usual, with choral music. And I got involved with our director, Carol Carver's community choir over in
Right.
Stillwater, the Valley Chamber Chorale.
Very well-known group.
Yeah, and Carol's been a dear friend of ours for all these years, and she's been just one of my greatest encouragers. And
Oh,
she always
that's
pushes me a little bit, and one of the things she asked me to do early on was to do some arranging for the Valley Chamber Chorale. And then she said, have you ever thought about writing something? She was a choral editor for Augsburg Fortress Publishing, and she said, we're always looking for things. Have you ever thought about writing, choral music for church choirs? And then, it just kind of grew from there. And so
Right.
it just kind of opened my eyes, I guess, to
whole
an
new-
ability to do some music
A
writing.
whole
So,
new area for
yeah.
you, and oh my goodness. And I know I've seen some of your compositions, and I'm not totally familiar with them, but at the church I'm at in Hudson, it's very likely we could even use some of your music.
very possible. Yeah.
So that would be great. Oh my goodness. I'm backing up a little bit again.
Yeah.
What is your favorite instrument and why? And what instruments are you proficient on?
Keyboard is still my main instrument. I mean, my mom or dad took a picture of me when I was still in the playpen, and they had moved the playpen right over by the piano.
That's
and
the
I was
story
looking
I
up
heard.
and playing a note on the keyboard, and I guess I knew what my instrument was even at that age. And I've expanded into I don't play pipe organ like my mom did, but I play a variety of electronic keyboards as well. Somewhat out of necessity because there's not always a piano in every
you're
place I
right.
go these days.
Exactly.
And then also just kind of my musical brain often is thinking compositionally, orchestrally, and so I like having a lot of colors to work with. But when you ask me what my favorite keyboard is or instrument, it's still piano.
Still the piano.
A well-tuned, good-sounding
That
grand
would
piano,
be
which
nice.
which I'm looking forward to playing one at the Phipps.
Oh, you'll be playing on the new piano, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's kept very well in tune. They should be tuning it the day of. That's for sure.
Yeah, we get spoiled over at Trinity too. We have a nice 1880 something Steinway that was restored.
Oh,
and
do you?
Yeah, so and
Oh,
it's a beautiful room to play in. So I oftentimes, if I get finished with the rehearsal of our contemporary group, they all leave. I pack up everything, and then I just sit and play for sometimes hours at a time. So
Well, what a beautiful thing to do.
it feeds me, and it's sort of
Yes, it does.
yeah,
I can remember back to the days when I was in college and I was practicing hours every day. And of course, I had the classes, and I have a major in vocal, but a minor in piano, and it was a lot of private study
yeah.
to get to that area.
Actually, that's college is when I first really learned to love practicing. I didn't love to
I
practice
loved
as a
it too.
kid. I could get away with
Well,
minimal practice.
kids like
but,
to kind of
yeah,
slack
but
a little
when I
on
got
that.
to college, I had a great teacher, and she challenged me, and I suddenly found myself wanting to practice for
Good.
hours a day. So
Yeah, that's the way I felt.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get away from the piano. It was just so wonderful to me. Right now, I like the Kawai brand, but I also like the Suzuki a little bit. And I wonder, do you have another favorite
instrument
type of
or
piano?
oh, do I like
I mean, have you played on a lot of the newer ones?
Saint
You know the Steinway is the epitome.
Yeah, well, I can tell you a story kind of on Robin's behalf too. We babysat a beautiful Yamaha 6-foot
Oh, that's what I was going to say,
concert
Yamaha.
grand piano in our home. There's a couple selling their condo, and they wanted to move the piano out of the condo to make it show a little bigger, and they called our friend Ken Hanna and said, well, where should we put it into storage? And he said, well, I think I know a couple that might be willing to keep it in their home for you.
Oh, how fortunate.
And so he called up Robin, and he says, do you have room for a 6-foot piano? And she says, hang on one second. She runs and measures our living room, and she comes back and she says, yes, it'll fit. And so the next thing we knew, we had this, and this was not like just a starter Yamaha piano.
No.
This was truly a concert quality instrument. It was better than many even Steinways that we've played. And, the couple were sort of like, well, we hope it'll be okay. It's probably going to be a couple months till the condo sells. Well, it was 3 years to the day almost that we had that piano, and it,
That's
you know,
very
it's,
lucky.
yeah, and it,
A quality instrument like that.
yeah. So to have that in our
Well, when
home,
I
so-
could finally afford a grand piano, wasn't so terribly many years ago, my mission was to get a Yamaha. And I went over to Schmidt Music, and I started playing on the different pianos, and I actually ended up with a Kawai. Now, I think it's because I like the touch and I like the sound, and they kind of did a sales job on me. So that's what I ended up with, a baby Kawai. But I like that so much, and you know they do have a baby Yamaha at the Phipps.
Have they? Well,
Yep. And that is one of my favorites
okay.
too.
Okay. Well, we have a Kawai. It's not a grand. We're still waiting to be able to afford a grand piano.
Well, yeah, these
so,
things
but
are
we like our
expensive.
Kawai up or vertical piano, and a friend of ours has a beautiful Kawai grand piano in his house. So I think that's a good brand. Too,
I do.
so,
I'm very partial now.
yeah.
Now, when you're composing, are you composing for vocal, choral?
It's been primarily for that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, although I've expanded into doing some, kind of chamber groups. Oftentimes, if there's a choral concert, say with the Valley Chamber Chorale, there will be a set of instruments that will accompany that, and so oftentimes I'll create arrangements, instrumental arrangements for those groups. So I'll either arrange something, or I've even composed some pieces for that.
That's
But yeah, primarily
great
vocal music.
talent.
I have not composed a big orchestral work, even though I dream of
Yeah,
what that would
someday.
be like to hear a piece
That would
your
be
piece
neat.
played by an orchestra. But
That would be really neat.
yeah.
Good. That's something I've never really studied, is composition, and it's not really my thing, but I have great admiration for you doing that. All right, now on October 5th, you're going to be performing at the Phipps at 7:30, and it's the Les Ismore Band. How did you get that name?
Les Ismore, yeah. Les Ismore was a band that was named well before I joined them. It was three of my friends had a trio, and they were just finding little gigs around town, and they kept saying, "Phil, you should come and sit in with us. Bring your keyboard and sit in with us." And finally I did, and so I loved it so much that they brought me on as the fourth member of Les Ismore. Yeah, they figured they needed a name real quick. I think somebody called and said, "We need a name to publish for your
right.
upcoming gig," and so they
Yes.
just kind of grabbed the name, but it's stuck. And the joke is that less is more. It's a play on words, but we keep getting larger because we've now
get it.
we've added a fifth member in the last
yes.
last couple of months, and so we're now a 5-piece band.
And you've got some other Hudsonites in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell us who they are, because somebody might recognize the names.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of people would recognize the name Brian Beauchamp.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I grew up with Brian and his family at the church that his dad was the
yes,
priest.
of course.
Yeah. And his brother Robin and I were good friends in school, played together. He played
yes,
trumpet. And
right.
I didn't really ever have a chance to play music with Brian until probably about 10 years ago. I found out that he had been playing drums at another church. And this friend of mine who had been at that church said, "Well, you should call Brian and see if he'd come and play." And so he started coming and playing with us at church, and that led to other things. In fact, all the members of Les Ismore were kind of sharing musicians between a couple of churches, Trinity and a church over in St. Paul, Woodland Hills Church. So there's a lot of musical talent that comes out of our church musicians and back into the world doing some other fun music as well. Mike Brusky is our bassist, and Mike lives here in Hudson.
Okay, I don't know him personally, but Brian was in my classes too.
Yeah. And the other two fellows live up in White Bear Lake. That's Nick Hall and
Very good.
and Greg Wallen. Greg is a worship leader over at Woodland Hills Church. He's been there a long time.
Yes,
and got to
okay.
know him over there originally. So
the instruments are?
we have, I'm on keyboard and vocals, and then we have two people on guitar. Greg and Nick are,
Oh, yeah.
are covering guitar and vocals. Brian is drumming and singing as well, and then Mike is our bassist. And so we have four of us are strong vocalists in the group, and then we have also a couple of guest vocalists, including Robin.
Oh,
and then
nice.
a good friend of mine, Carol Zimmerman, who hails from Chaska. But we get her out on this side of town
Okay,
once in a
very
while to
good.
sing. So, yeah, so we're going to have a lot of vocal strength, and the really fun thing about this group is that we're able to really capture the essence of these songs that we're doing. The group has existed all along to just kind of pick music that we all love and remember. We're a cover band, you know, as they say.
Yes.
But we have such a diverse repertoire that people are sometimes surprised at what comes
yeah.
out of us, because we have some very odd, you know, extremes of the music that we do, and yet we all love it. And so that's
Well-
kind of how the show came about too. Was out of that eclectic nature of the group.
So you're into the jazz and you're into the pop styles of some of the people you imitate. And would you say that you're into the blues a little and that style as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I would never
Oh,
call us a blues
appealing.
band, but we have several blues things
I
in our
love that
repertoire.
music.
Yeah, yeah. So.
So you sit down and jam and then you work through these things?
Yeah, I mean, when I first came on board, I was totally like, come sit in and fake my way through this. But we eventually started, we thought, well, maybe we should rehearse. And, you know, if we're going to try to find gigs, we'll start rehearsing. We just had so much fun rehearsing.
Oh,
It's sort of like
I can
practicing
imagine.
piano. It wasn't like, oh, we have to rehearse. It was more like, oh, when do we get to rehearse next?
Yeah.
And then so when John Potter approached me, I know John Potter through past, I've done a few things with the Phipps, but John and his wife Mary Claire are good friends of Trinity as well, and
Oh.
have gotten to know, and John's gotten to know what I do musically, and so he asked me if I wanted to be a part of this upcoming season.
Wonderful.
And-
I'm so glad he did that.
Yeah. So I think he was a little surprised when I suggested this particular program, because John knows me more as, you know, that church musician guy, that even the
Right.
jazz musician.
Exactly.
I play with a big band here in the St. Croix Valley called the St. Croix Jazz Orchestra, and I know he's heard me there. So I think he was maybe
right.
expecting at first that I'd do a jazz program or something, and instead I
right.
said, well, you know, I've got this band that
Yes.
we do
Oh.
we do all these songs that we grew up with, and they shaped us. You know, it's not just that we listened to these songs, but these actually shaped us as the musicians we became. They were our musical influences and shaped our musical vocabulary. So I thought it was worth telling that story to people.
I think
So-
that's wonderful. Now, I know they've quoted a lot of songs here, but everything from Elvis to the Beatles to the Bee Gees,
Yes.
Elvis Costello. I mean, you've got a lot of things going on here, and I would think this would be a delightful program.
It will be. I mean,
I
it'll
think
be a
very
blend
enjoyable.
it'll be a blend of the songs done I would say very authentically to the originals, and then with a little bit of narrative along that. We'll each probably have a couple of stories about
Okay.
particular songs.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, it says here you're going to bring your own stories about what these treasured songs mean to you and forming your own musical identity.
Yeah.
So what fun. Oh, I think that sounds, I would certainly recommend this concert to anybody who wants to go.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but there are specific songs that I remember from certain periods of life. And most people I talk to have that same kind of emotional connection. So we're hoping that for people who grew up listening to, you know, in this case, 45 RPM records or any music, that they will kind of enjoy hearing some other stories and making those connections, and even recalling some of these same songs in their own lives. So
Yes, oh, definitely. I have to tell you, I'm at that stage now. I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I was in college, and then I came here to Hudson, and every era had favorite music for me.
yeah, I'm sure you
And
did.
I always used to try to expose my students to it too,
Good for you. Yeah.
because they always were listening to the pop stuff, and then every once in a while, well, towards the end of the year, I would pull some of that out, and they go, "We get to sing this? This is so neat!" And I thought, well, it's been a way that music has connected through the generations.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's affected me too, because I have all those memories of how, what I remember is like things like when John F. Kennedy was shot.
Yes, the year I was born.
Music of that era. And then you go through all the different things in history, and I saw the Beatles in person.
Did you?
I was a Beatle nut in college. And they came, that very next year.
Yeah, after they'd done the
And my husband-to-be said, "We're going."
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, the old Met Stadium.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of people who went to that.
Yeah.
I was 1 year, less than 1 year old, so I could not go to that one.
No,
but,
I guess that's. And the other one is Elvis. I also saw Elvis live, but unfortunately it was after he was into drugs.
Yeah.
And he was very overweight.
Okay.
And it was a very lethargic concert. And it wasn't really his best, but I loved his recordings.
I had a cousin who loved Elvis. She must have bought every Elvis 45, and she would take them out of the sleeve and put them all in a record holder, and then she'd put the covers up on her wall, and we'd go over to their house, and she had the coolest basement in the world.
I bet she did.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing too when I was growing up.
Okay.
Was buying Elvis records and all that. And then I sort of evolved into I like the Bee Gees a lot.
Well, that's
I
good.
like their harmonies and I like the falsetto.
Yeah, me
and
too.
nobody else sung like that.
No.
So I mean, but their songs were so engaging.
Absolutely.
Such fun. So yeah, a lot of fun for me too to remember those days.
Yeah. Our biggest challenge is just covering even snippets of all the wonderful music that comes out of, it's roughly about 50 years of singles that came out on 45, and of course now it continues with digital downloads and so forth. But
look at the technology now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just incredible when I think about it, how it's changed since I started teaching, and then I taught 36 years. Now I've been retired, I won't say how many years, that's getting a little too technical. But I mean, I still follow all the music. And we still go to, I've been to Celine Dion, and I've been to see a lot of musicians I really admire.
That's great.
If I really think they have good vocal technique,
Yeah.
then I'm really interested into that. And I do like to, that's one of my favorite things too, still, is going to concerts and musicals.
Yeah.
I'm into musicals big time. And I think they're really fun too. And of course I used to do, when I first came to Hudson, this is funny, they had one concert for all the grades every other year. And I just thought, wow, that is so little, so little.
Yeah.
Why not every year? Well, it's because I was stretched between 4 schools.
Oh,
I was teaching out all 4 elementaries. So the next year I started, I had to do this pattern that was there. But the third year I said, I have an idea. I want to do a concert for every grade level. So every student has a part. Whether they like to sing or not, they'll be doing a part on something. And I would find things for them to do. And it was like wildfire for me. And then pretty soon I was doing in grades, I taught 1 through 6 the first few years. And I was doing a concert in every grade level.
Wow.
And then that was at all 4 schools. That got a little crazy.
Yeah.
But no, that was really my thing, because I could see how much it meant to the students. And they were developing a lot of techniques and a lot of self-expression to get up there and do these things.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorite things about teaching in Hudson.
Well, and not to become too political, but that's why we need to support, the levies that
I'm
are
really
proposed,
glad
because,
you said that.
None of us want to see music disappear at any of the grade levels, but especially not early on.
Those students that don't have music in their curriculum, it's really hard for me to think that way.
Yeah.
And the things that have been cut out are the arts, basically. And that's a big part of my life because my husband was an art teacher in Baldwin High School.
Okay.
My son is an artist out in San Diego. So that's three of the four in our family are all arts.
Yeah.
And that made a difference too because I had a guy that could do my scenery so easily and design and all that.
Right.
And he did the musicals every year in Baldwin. So I was really lucky because I would come home and I say, oh, I'm doing Cinderella now. I want the coach. I need a coach for Cinderella to ride in. And he came up with a one-sided coach that would move along, of course, with the kids pushing. Yeah. And all that stuff. And then the next year I went down there and they were doing Music Man. And I saw all the stuff, he'd built all the buildings and that for the town. And I said, I have to have that school. And he said, this time I have to say no, because I don't know how you would get it to Hudson. It's too tall, it's too wide, and there's nothing that it wouldn't even fit on a truck. So yeah, that was kind of sad, but then I would see the way that the kids would respond to things like Pinocchio and the Whale. And he made me a big whale. And the kids could crawl in where the teeth were. Well, that went immediately to the kindergarten room after my musical. And those kids used it for reading time. So yeah. A lot of the things that I was doing were just such fun for me.
I remember going to a concert that my brother sang in. He must have been junior high.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I think it was Noah's Ark or something.
Yes.
And there was a song. It looks like rain.
Oh.
And that song just has stuck in my brain for close to 50 years, and I had to go look it up to see, is this just, I'm imagining this song, and I had to go look it up online to make sure that it was a real song and so forth. But yeah, I remember all these little things that about music in school that
it made a big impression on me.
And I haven't really mentioned, we have 4 kids too, and they're all musical.
Yes,
they all play instruments, and
I love that.
Our son Riley will be joining us for a couple of the pieces on the concert.
Really?
He's playing guitar with us.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 23.
Your son is 23?
Yeah.
Goodness, where did those years go?
I know, that sounds old even to
So
me.
you have at least one budding musician. I bet you have more in your family.
They're all musical, yeah.
They all love
music.
music.
We have pianist, cellist, several of them sing and write music as well. So
that's another thing that I'm so happy the Hudson schools have orchestra now.
Yeah, that was.
And I was on that committee for years. We've been turned down so many times because it couldn't fit in the curriculum and they didn't have the funds. And finally, we got an orchestra on Hudson.
That is wonderful.
And now it's gone through the high school.
Yeah.
So I'm just delighted about that. I mean, I can't tell you how happy that made me. And it happened just about when I was retiring. Okay. But that's okay. I still go to some of those concerts and I really enjoy it. And I have some connections into the schools yet with the music teachers.
I bet you do.
So that's a lot of fun. But anyway, I do digress. It's just so many nice memories.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. What would you like to say about the concert? I've been talking too much. Do you want to invite our audience to the concert? I know our shows are seen all the way down to Madison.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the concert.
Well, we're really going to trace that music that kind of parallels the advent of the 45 single. I mean, there had been 78s out for decades that were kind of the mainstay of how people got songs, 1 or 2 songs at a time. And the 45 actually did not come out as a format just to introduce a couple of songs. It was actually in response to another record company developing the long play record. And so RCA said, well, we need to compete, so we're going to create a whole different format, and we'll put several of these records into an album, and they created it with the bigger whole to, I mean, some would say to completely distance themselves and compete with this other format, but over time, the album of 45 concept kind of faded, but the 45 replaced those old 78s that were so scratchy and easily broken. And so that's why it became an enduring format for music. It was inexpensive, probably about on average $1 for a 45 through several decades. And so you're talking about music that, spans even, some later Frank Sinatra music would have been reissued on 45, and then about the time that rock and roll debuted with Bill Haley and his Comets, Rock Around the Clock in 1954.
Yes, and you're doing that.
That was the established format for singles, and so then Elvis and the Beatles and everything that came after that. I used to go downtown Hudson here to Erickson's grocery store, and they'd have the records. I mean, you could go buy a single anywhere. Gas stations, grocery stores, and later I discovered actual record stores. But so the show traces a little bit of the history of that, and then some of what was happening in culture as well that influenced music. And so we pick a little bit of music out of several kind of historic periods. There's the Beatles are sort of their own little moment in music, and then there's the psychedelic era at the 60s with and then 70s, and we take it on up through about 1981, I think, is where we kind of say, we stopped buying singles at that point, and we're more buying grown up, LPs and albums by then. But so people who come can expect that there will be a wide variety of music.
And I see you like them to sing along.
There will be some nice sing-along opportunities, yes.
People are going to love
We
this.
figure that a lot of people who would come to the show will know these songs pretty well, that they can, sing along.
Of course. Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful idea.
Well, thank you.
I think you've tapped into a lot of people here that are going to want to come to your concert.
That is our hope.
And I should talk about the tickets. Adults, $22. Students of all ages, $15. Some of us have bought the season tickets, so we have a discount there. And the ticket office, we're going to show it on the screen too, but it's 715-386-8409. And don't forget the website, www.thefips.org. And a couple months ago, we put that all on too when John Potter was here.
Okay.
But I'm going to have them put it back up. And I know you would really enjoy this show. And Phil, I want to thank you so much.
Well, it's been fun.
It's been a nice talk down memory lane.
Truly.
Remembering you as a first grader and going through the years. I really enjoyed talking to you. I would really like to keep in touch with you.
We will. We're not that far apart.
No,
just
we're not.
Just a river away.
It's just a river. So please do buy your tickets, enjoy the show, and I hope you will enjoy watching the show every month. We start a new show just about every month on the 1st. And I thank you for watching the show today. I hope you enjoyed it.